I bet you didn't know your tomatoes could be dangerous. Here's why. Ray and Mascari Inc. is recalling 4-count vine-ripe tomatoes, packaged in 20-ounce clamshell containers, due to potential salmonella contamination. These tomatoes, sourced from Hanshaw and Kapling Farms in Florida, were sold at Gordon Food Service stores across 11 states, including Illinois, Indiana, and New York. Check your labels for vine-ripe tomatoes and lot numbers, RM250424-15250B or RM250427-15250B. If you have these tomatoes, discard them immediately. No illnesses have been reported yet, but don't take any chances. Salmonella can cause serious infections, especially in young children, the elderly, and those with weakened immune systems. Watch out for symptoms like diarrhea, fever, and stomach cramps, which can appear 6 hours to 6 days after consumption. For questions or to report an illness, contact Ray and Mascari Inc. at 1-317-637-0234. Stay safe and stay informed.
President Trump's recent comments on tariffs have sent ripples of unease through the Republican Party, particularly among Senate Republicans. In a Meet the Press interview, Trump suggested that some tariffs could become permanent fixtures of his economic policy. He argued that these tariffs are essential to protect American jobs and encourage domestic production. Adding to the anxiety, Trump downplayed the potential impact of a short-term recession. He framed it as a necessary transition period on the path to a stronger, more robust economy. These statements have ignited a firestorm of debate and concern. Senate Republicans, already wary of the administration's trade policies, have expressed growing apprehension about the president's comments. Senator Susan Collins voiced her concerns, stating that permanent tariffs would be a mistake. She emphasized the importance of free and fair trade, arguing that tariffs should be used strategically, not as a long-term solution. Senator Pat Toomey echoed these sentiments, cautioning that tariffs are taxes on American consumers and businesses. He argued that prolonged tariffs could stifle economic growth and harm American competitiveness. The Trump administration's approach to tariffs has been marked by fluctuation and unpredictability, generating uncertainty in the market. Early in his presidency, Trump imposed hefty tariffs on goods from numerous countries, including a 25% tariff on steel imports and a 10% tariff on aluminum imports. These tariffs were met with retaliatory measures from trading partners, escalating trade tensions and impacting businesses and consumers. The administration's on-again, off-again approach to tariff negotiations has added to the market volatility. Recent economic data offers a mixed bag of positive and negative indicators, further fueling the debate over the efficacy of the administration's trade policies. On the one hand, the unemployment rate has remained low, hovering around 3.6%, indicating a strong labor market. On the other hand, the economy experienced a slight contraction in the first quarter of 2025, shrinking by 0.3%. This contraction, coupled with slowing manufacturing activity and declining business investment, has raised concerns about a potential economic slowdown. Amidst the uncertainty, the administration's ongoing trade negotiations with multiple countries offer a glimmer of hope. U.S. Trade Representative Katherine Tai has been engaged in talks with key trading partners, including China, the European Union, and Canada. These negotiations aim to address trade imbalances, protect intellectual property rights, and reduce tariffs. Senate Republicans have urged Ambassador Tai to provide regular updates on the progress of these negotiations to alleviate concerns and provide much-needed clarity for businesses and consumers. In tandem with trade negotiations, the Treasury Department, under Secretary Janet Yellen, has been actively promoting investment in the American economy. Secretary Yellen has highlighted the administration's commitment to fostering economic growth through a combination of tax cuts, deregulation, and infrastructure spending. She has argued that these measures, alongside a resolution to trade disputes, will create a more favorable environment for businesses to invest and expand, ultimately leading to job creation and economic prosperity. The current economic strategy, characterized by a mix of tariffs, trade negotiations, and pro-investment policies, presents both risks and rewards. On the one hand, tariffs, if used strategically and temporarily, can protect domestic industries and incentivize trading partners to negotiate fairer trade deals. On the other hand, prolonged tariffs risk escalating trade wars, increasing costs for consumers and businesses, and hindering economic growth. The success of this strategy hinges on the administration's ability to strike a delicate balance between these competing forces. As the administration navigates these complex economic challenges, the outcome remains uncertain. The success of trade negotiations, the impact of tariffs on businesses and consumers, and the overall health of the global economy will all play a role in shaping the economic landscape in the months and years to come. Senate Republicans, along with the American people, are closely watching and awaiting the results of these policies, hoping for a positive outcome that benefits all. The debate over President Trump's tariff policies highlights the inherent complexities and uncertainties of navigating the global economy. While the administration's efforts to protect American jobs and promote domestic production are understandable, the use of tariffs as a primary tool raises concerns about unintended consequences. As the administration continues to pursue its economic agenda, it is crucial to prioritize open communication, transparency, and a data-driven approach to ensure that policies ultimately benefit the American people and lead to sustained economic growth.
In a move that sent shockwaves through the media landscape, President Trump signed an executive order aimed at restricting federal funding to National Public Radio and the Public Broadcasting Service. This decision ignited a firestorm of controversy, with critics decrying it as an assault on press freedom and supporters applauding it as a long overdue measure to address perceived bias in these publicly funded institutions. The executive order itself, however, faced immediate challenges, with legal experts questioning its enforceability and pointing out that Congress, not the president, holds the purse strings when it comes to appropriations for public broadcasting. Despite the legal hurdles, the executive order served as a stark reminder of the precarious position of public media in an increasingly polarized political climate. While the immediate impact of the order remained uncertain, it cast a long shadow over the future of NPR and PBS, raising questions about their ability to maintain their editorial independence and financial stability in the face of political pressure. The order also sparked a broader debate about the role of public media in a democratic society, with some arguing that it should serve as a neutral platform for diverse viewpoints and others contending that it has a responsibility to advocate for progressive values. The media's response to the executive order was swift and largely critical, with many outlets characterizing it as an attempt to silence dissenting voices and undermine the free press. News organizations across the political spectrum published articles and editorials condemning the move, framing it as part of a larger pattern of attacks on journalism by the Trump administration. Some commentators went so far as to compare the executive order to the actions of authoritarian regimes that seek to control the flow of information. The media's outrage, however, was met with skepticism from some quarters, with critics accusing them of hypocrisy and pointing to instances of bias in their own reporting. This funding showdown between the Trump administration and public media highlighted the deep divisions that exist within American society and the challenges facing journalism in an era of misinformation and political polarization. It also underscored the importance of media literacy and critical thinking skills, as citizens are increasingly bombarded with conflicting narratives and must navigate a complex media landscape to form their own informed opinions. The executive order, regardless of its ultimate impact, served as a wake-up call for both public media and the broader journalism industry, prompting a much-needed conversation about funding models, editorial independence, and the public's trust in the news. The executive order targeting NPR and PBS funding, regardless of its legal ramifications, presented a crucial opportunity for the media to engage in profound self-reflection. The media's role as the fourth estate, a watchdog of power, hinges on its credibility and the public's trust. Yet, the increasing polarization of American society and the rise of social media have eroded this trust, leaving many citizens questioning the objectivity and fairness of mainstream news outlets. The executive order, seen by many as an attack on press freedom, inadvertently exposed the vulnerabilities of the media and the need for a critical examination of its own practices. Journalists and media organizations, instead of solely focusing on external threats, should have utilized this moment to address internal challenges. The industry's long-standing struggles with diversity, both in terms of representation and viewpoints, require urgent attention. A lack of diversity within newsrooms can lead to blind spots and perpetuate existing biases, further alienating segments of the population. Moreover, the media's tendency to gravitate towards sensationalism and negativity, often at the expense of nuanced reporting, contributes to public cynicism and distrust. This period of introspection should have extended beyond individual newsrooms. Journalism schools, responsible for shaping the next generation of reporters and editors, bear a responsibility to instill a commitment to fairness and accuracy. The increasing prevalence of advocacy journalism, while well-intentioned, risks blurring the lines between reporting and opinion, further contributing to the perception of media bias. A renewed emphasis on journalistic ethics, critical thinking skills, and the importance of presenting a balanced and comprehensive view of events is essential for restoring public trust. The media's credibility crisis is not solely a product of external attacks or political pressure. It is also a consequence of internal shortcomings and a failure to adapt to the evolving media landscape. By embracing self-reflection and addressing its own biases, the media can begin to rebuild trust with a skeptical public and reaffirm its essential role in a functioning democracy. Failure to do so risks further fragmentation, polarization, and a decline in the quality and impact of journalism itself. The phrase, "let's go." Brandon has become more than just a viral slogan. It's a symbol of growing dissatisfaction with mainstream media. Many people feel that traditional news outlets no longer represent their views or interests. This sentiment has led to an exodus from mainstream media, with audiences seeking alternative sources of information. The rise of independent media and digital platforms is a direct response to this shift. People are looking for voices they can trust, and they're finding them outside the conventional media landscape. It's a fascinating development, one that speaks volumes about the current state of media trust and consumption. And, well, it begs the question, what does the future hold for mainstream media in this new era? In the intricate web of journalism, internal bias often seeps into the very fabric of newsrooms. Funding controversies are not uncommon, and they can lead to significant upheavals. Resignations, whether voluntary or forced, are sometimes the inevitable outcome of these deep-seated issues. The debate over neutrality in journalism is as old as the profession itself. Is striving for neutrality making journalism irrelevant in today's polarized world? Or is it more critical than ever to maintain an unbiased stance? These questions continue to challenge the core principles of journalistic integrity. When the public loses trust in the media, the consequences are far-reaching. Without credibility, journalism loses its power to inform and influence. The erosion of trust can lead to a misinformed public, which in turn can have serious implications for democracy and society as a whole. Despite the challenges, there is a path forward for American journalism. Embracing transparency, fostering accountability, and recommitting to ethical standards can help rebuild trust. By adapting to the changing landscape while holding firm to core values, journalism can continue to play a vital role in our democracy.
The coming week looms large for House Republicans. It will be a critical test of their ability to unite behind President Trump's legislative agenda. Speaker Mike Johnson has set an ambitious goal: pass the bill by Memorial Day. However, deep divisions within the party threaten to derail this timeline. Disagreements on key policy issues have stalled progress, exposing the challenges of legislating in a divided government. The stakes are high, with implications for the nation's budget, energy future, and the political fortunes of both the Republican Party and the president himself. This is not just about policy, it's about politics. Can Republicans deliver on their promises to voters? Can they demonstrate an ability to govern effectively? The answers to these questions will resonate far beyond the halls of Congress, shaping the political landscape for years to come. Failure to pass a bill or even a significantly scaled-back version would be a major setback for both Trump and the Republican Party. It would signal weakness and disunity, potentially emboldening Democrats and complicating the party's prospects in the upcoming midterm elections. The pressure is mounting. Conservative groups are demanding action, while moderate Republicans are wary of alienating their constituents. Trump, never one to shy away from a fight, has inserted himself into the fray, using both carrot and stick to try to bring Republicans in line. The coming days will reveal whether his efforts will be enough to overcome the deep divisions within his party. The outcome of this legislative battle will have profound implications, not just for the individuals involved, but for the future direction of the country. The world is watching as this drama unfolds in Washington. Will Republicans rise to the occasion and deliver on their promises? Or will internal divisions and political maneuvering derail their efforts? The answers to these questions will have far-reaching consequences, shaping the political landscape for years to come. The stakes are high, the pressure is intense, and the outcome remains uncertain. No issue has proven more contentious than Medicaid. Conservatives, long eager to rein in the program's costs, see this as a prime opportunity to enact significant reforms. They argue that the program is unsustainable in its current form and that reforms are necessary to ensure its long-term viability. Their proposals include deep cuts to federal funding, a shift to block grants, and increased flexibility for states to manage their own programs. Moderates, however, are wary of such drastic measures. They fear that deep cuts would harm vulnerable populations who rely on Medicaid for their healthcare needs. They point to the program's success in expanding coverage and improving health outcomes, arguing that any reform should be carefully considered and implemented gradually. The debate over Medicaid cuts highlights a fundamental divide within the Republican Party between those who prioritize fiscal austerity and those who emphasize social safety nets. Caught in the middle are millions of Americans who rely on Medicaid for their health care. For many low-income families, seniors, and individuals with disabilities, Medicaid is not just a safety net, but a lifeline. The outcome of this debate will have a direct impact on their lives, determining their access to essential healthcare services. The human cost of these policy decisions cannot be ignored. The battle over Medicaid is about more than just dollars and cents. It's about values. It's about the role of government in providing for its citizens, the balance between fiscal responsibility and social compassion. The outcome of this debate will have profound implications for the future of healthcare in America and for the millions of Americans who rely on Medicaid for their well-being. Adding fuel to the fire is the debate over the state and local tax, or SALT, deduction. This deduction, a long-standing provision in the tax code, allows taxpayers to deduct state and local taxes from their federal income taxes. However, the 2017 tax cuts capped this deduction at $10,000, a move that disproportionately impacted taxpayers in high-tax states, many of whom are represented by Republicans. Now, Republicans from these states are pushing to raise or eliminate the cap altogether. They argue that the cap unfairly penalizes their constituents and puts them at a competitive disadvantage. They contend that raising or eliminating the cap would provide much-needed tax relief for middle-class families and businesses in their districts. However, their efforts face stiff opposition from fiscal conservatives who view any increase in the SALT deduction as a costly giveaway to wealthy taxpayers. This issue has become a major sticking point in negotiations, threatening to derail the entire bill. Republicans from high-tax states have vowed to oppose any bill that does not address their concerns, while fiscal conservatives remain equally adamant in their opposition to any increase in the SALT deduction. Finding a compromise that can satisfy both sides will be crucial for the bill's passage. The SALT deduction debate highlights the complex interplay between tax policy, regional politics, and economic competitiveness. It underscores the challenges of crafting tax legislation that is both fair and fiscally responsible. The outcome of this debate will have significant implications for taxpayers across the country, particularly those in high-tax states who are most affected by the SALT deduction cap. Managing the nation's finances is no easy task. Governments must carefully balance spending and revenue to avoid deficits while still funding essential services. This often involves making tough decisions and prioritizing certain programs over others. Fiscal policies can impact everything from education and healthcare to infrastructure and defense. It's a delicate balancing act, requiring foresight, discipline, and sometimes a bit of compromise. In this chapter, we dive into the intricate process of shaping the legislative landscape. Legislation doesn't just appear out of thin air, it's a product of rigorous debate, negotiation, and compromise. Lawmakers, lobbyists, and stakeholders all play a crucial role in this dynamic environment. Now, let's explore the urgency often associated with passing legislation. Deadlines loom large, and the pressure to deliver can be immense. Lawmakers must navigate through a maze of procedural hurdles, all while keeping an eye on the ticking clock. Here, we examine the forces of influence and pressure that shape legislative outcomes. Lobbyists, advocacy groups, and public opinion all exert their weight, attempting to sway decisions in their favor. It's a delicate balance of power and persuasion. Finally, we look at the outcomes of the legislative process. Will it lead to unity or fracture? The decisions made within these chambers have far-reaching implications, affecting the lives of countless individuals. It's a testament to the complexity and significance of governance.
Massad Boulos. The name itself carries an air of hushed whispers, of backroom deals and power plays. Thrust into the spotlight by his marriage to Tiffany Trump, daughter of the 45th president, Boulos found himself navigating the turbulent waters of Donald Trump's Washington. His ambition was clear: to leverage his unique position within the First Family, to carve out a space for himself in the world of international diplomacy. What unfolded, however, was a story of ambition clashing with the realities of power, of family ties stretched thin, and of a reputation both bolstered and tarnished by the association with the Trump name. Boulos's entry into the Trump administration was swift, a testament to the transactional nature of power that defined the era. His appointment as a senior advisor on the Middle East raised eyebrows. He was young, inexperienced, and his primary qualifications seemed to be his proximity to the president's family. This perception followed him, casting a long shadow over his early days in Washington. While his official role focused on the Middle East, Boulos quickly turned his attention to Africa, a continent ripe with opportunities for a young man seeking to make his mark. It was a move that would define his time in the administration, for better or for worse. Boulos's foray into African affairs began with a stumble. His inaugural trip to the continent was marred by logistical issues, a harbinger of the challenges that lay ahead. The government refused to fund a military flight, forcing him to fly commercial and curtail his itinerary. The incident, widely reported in the press, painted a picture of a young man out of his depth, struggling to command respect in the high-stakes world of international diplomacy. It was a stark reminder that family ties could only take you so far. To succeed, Boulos would need to prove his worth on his own merits. The logistical hiccups of Boulos's first Africa trip were more than just a minor embarrassment. They exposed a deeper truth about his position within the administration. Despite his familial connection to the president, Boulos was an outsider, viewed with suspicion by the Washington establishment. His lack of experience and his brash, often unorthodox approach did little to endear him to the seasoned diplomats and policy wonks who populated the State Department. He was seen as a dilettante, dabbling in matters of state for personal gain. The incident also highlighted the transactional nature of the Trump administration. Loyalty to the family was paramount, but it did not guarantee smooth sailing. Boulos, despite being the son-in-law of the president's daughter, was not immune to the bureaucratic hurdles and power struggles that characterized the Trump White House. He quickly learned that to navigate this treacherous landscape, he would need to be shrewd, resourceful, and willing to operate in the shadows. Despite the initial setbacks, Boulos pressed on, determined to carve out a space for himself in the Trump administration's Africa policy. He traveled extensively throughout the continent, meeting with heads of state, business leaders, and local officials. He spoke of his desire to strengthen ties between the United States and Africa, to promote economic development and counter Chinese influence on the continent. His efforts, however, were often met with skepticism. Critics questioned his motives, suggesting that he was more interested in advancing his own business interests than in serving the interests of the United States. The whispers followed him wherever he went. Was he a well-intentioned, if inexperienced idealist? Or was he a cunning operator seeking to profit from his family's name? The answer, like most things in Trump's Washington, was likely a bit of both. Boulos was a product of his environment, a young man on the make, in an administration where loyalty and self-interest were often intertwined. He was determined to prove his doubters wrong, but his path to redemption was fraught with obstacles. The Oval Office, a cauldron of power where decisions of global consequence were made. Massad Boulos, by virtue of his marriage to Tiffany Trump, had a seat at this table. Yet, having a seat did not equate to having a voice. He was a keen observer, present at crucial meetings, privy to confidential discussions. But his opinions, his insights, were often met with polite disinterest, a clear indication that he was tolerated rather than embraced. The old guard of the Trump administration, the seasoned politicians and strategists who had weathered numerous storms, regarded Boulos with a mixture of amusement and suspicion. They saw him as a lightweight, a political neophyte who had stumbled into a position of influence through sheer luck. His attempts to contribute to policy discussions were often rebuffed, his ideas dismissed as naive or impractical. This exclusion from the inner circle fueled a sense of frustration in Boulos. He possessed a sharp intellect and a genuine passion for international affairs, particularly in the African context. He had studied the intricacies of international diplomacy, had immersed himself in the complexities of the African continent. However, his knowledge, his enthusiasm seemed to count for little in the ruthless calculus of Washington power politics. The experience left an indelible mark on Boulos. It instilled in him a deep understanding of the limits of familial ties, of the fickle nature of power. He realized that to be truly effective, he needed to build his own network of influence, to cultivate allies and outmaneuver rivals. It was a lesson that would shape his future endeavors, pushing him to operate with a greater degree of independence, even if it meant occasionally clashing with the established order. The confines of traditional diplomacy, with its carefully worded statements and meticulously planned meetings, proved too restrictive for Massad Boulos. He craved action, tangible results. This desire, coupled with his outsider status within the administration, led him down a path of unorthodox diplomacy, often referred to as freelancing. Boulos began to operate independently, holding unauthorized meetings with foreign leaders and dignitaries, bypassing the traditional diplomatic channels. He saw himself as a deal-maker, a bridge between nations, cutting through bureaucratic red tape to achieve concrete outcomes. His efforts, while well-intentioned, often ruffled feathers within the State Department where his actions were perceived as a breach of protocol, a threat to established diplomatic norms. One particular incident exemplifies Boulos's maverick approach. He arranged a meeting with a controversial African leader, a figure shunned by the international community for human rights abuses. The meeting, conducted without the knowledge or consent of the State Department, caused a diplomatic uproar. Critics accused Boulos of undermining U.S. foreign policy, of lending legitimacy to a dictator. Boulos, however, remained undeterred. He defended his actions, arguing that dialogue, even with unsavory characters, was essential to advancing U.S. interests. He believed that his unique position, his ability to operate outside the constraints of traditional diplomacy, gave him leverage that career diplomats lacked. His actions, though controversial, reflected a growing belief that the old rules of diplomacy were no longer sufficient in a world increasingly defined by shifting alliances and unconventional power dynamics. Rumors, they say, travel faster than the speed of light. In the hushed halls, whispers of misdeeds began to surface. Some called them mere fabrications, while others swore they held a kernel of truth. The administration found itself at a crossroads, torn between loyalty and the pursuit of justice. Every whisper, every secret, added another layer to the growing tension, and the stakes, well, they had never been higher. Throughout his career, Boulos achieved significant victories on the African continent. His strategies and diplomatic efforts often turned the tide in favor of his goals. Many remember him for his ability to navigate complex political landscapes with ease. Boulos held numerous titles throughout his tenure, each reflecting a different aspect of his multifaceted role. From diplomat to strategist, his titles were as varied as his responsibilities. This maze of titles often left people wondering about the true extent of his influence. While many praised Boulos for his accomplishments, not everyone was a fan. Behind closed doors, some gritted their teeth, acknowledging his successes, but wary of his methods. His reputation was a mix of admiration and caution. Boulos's legacy is one of transactional power. He built alliances and brokered deals that left a lasting impact. His approach was pragmatic, always focused on achieving tangible results. This legacy continues to influence the political landscape today.
In a move that sent shockwaves through Washington, Senator Marco Rubio has assumed the mantle of America's top diplomat, becoming Secretary of State in President Trump's second term. This appointment alone would be significant, marking a new chapter in U.S. foreign policy. However, Rubio's purview extends even further. He has also stepped into the role of Interim National Security Advisor, a position left vacant after the abrupt dismissal of Mike Waltz. This unprecedented dual role has ignited a firestorm of debate, with questions swirling about Rubio's ability to juggle these demanding positions and the implications for America's place in the world. Rubio's journey to this unprecedented position of power is marked by both political maneuvering and a shifting political landscape. His initial appointment as Secretary of State was met with mixed reactions, with some praising his experience on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and others expressing concern over his alignment with President Trump's often unconventional foreign policy views. The subsequent dismissal of Waltz, reportedly due to clashes with the president and internal leaks, created a vacuum at the heart of America's national security apparatus. Rubio's appointment as Interim National Security Advisor, while presented as a temporary measure, has solidified his position as one of the most powerful figures in the administration. This consolidation of power has drawn comparisons to historical figures like Henry Kissinger, who famously held both positions under Presidents Nixon and Ford. However, the political climate in which Rubio operates is vastly different, characterized by hyperpartisanship, a volatile global landscape, and the ever-present scrutiny of the 24-hour news cycle. As Rubio settles into his dual roles, the world watches with bated breath. Will he prove to be a moderating influence on President Trump's impulsive foreign policy, or will he become a mere echo chamber, amplifying the president's America First agenda? The answer to this question holds profound implications, not only for the United States, but for the future of global order. The stakes are undeniably high. Rubio's performance in these dual roles will have far-reaching consequences, shaping America's relationships with allies and adversaries alike. The world is watching to see if Rubio will rise to the challenge, or if his tenure will be remembered as a missed opportunity in a time of global uncertainty. The weight of two of the most demanding jobs in government rests squarely on Marco Rubio's shoulders. The Secretary of State, traditionally tasked with diplomacy and navigating the intricate web of international relations, now also bears the mantle of National Security Advisor. This latter role places Rubio at the epicenter of crisis management, intelligence analysis, and advising the president on matters of war and peace. The sheer volume of work is staggering. Rubio is now responsible for overseeing the vast bureaucracy of the State Department, managing relationships with over 180 countries, and coordinating with numerous other government agencies. Simultaneously, he must stay abreast of global hotspots, assess threats to national security, and provide the president with strategic advice on a daily, if not hourly, basis. Many experts, including seasoned diplomats and former government officials, have expressed serious doubts about the feasibility of one person effectively managing both roles. Aaron David Miller, a veteran diplomat with the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, has gone so far as to call the arrangement impossible in a normal administration. The concern is that something has to give. Either the State Department will be neglected as Rubio focuses on the immediate demands of national security, or crucial time and energy will be diverted from advising the president on matters of global importance. This situation is further complicated by the fact that Rubio is operating within an administration known for its unorthodox approach to foreign policy and its penchant for sidelining expert advice. The fear is that Rubio will be stretched too thin, unable to dedicate the necessary time and attention to either role, let alone both. This could have disastrous consequences for American diplomacy and national security at a time when the world can ill afford such a leadership vacuum. A key question surrounding Rubio's dual appointment is whether it will grant him greater influence over U.S. foreign policy or simply amplify President Trump's existing agenda. While proximity to power is often seen as a path to influence, some experts caution against overestimating Rubio's ability to sway the president's thinking. Corey Sheikh, a respected foreign policy expert at the American Enterprise Institute, argues that Rubio is more likely to amplify, not influence, Trump's positions. She points to Rubio's past willingness to defend the president's controversial foreign policy decisions, even when they contradicted his own previously stated principles. This suggests that Rubio may be more focused on maintaining his position within the administration than on challenging the president's worldview. Furthermore, Rubio's appointment comes at a time when President Trump has shown a clear preference for surrounding himself with loyalists rather than experienced advisors who might challenge his views. This raises concerns that Rubio's role may be more about providing a veneer of respectability to the administration's foreign policy than about shaping its direction. The true test of Rubio's influence will be his ability to offer candid and at times critical advice to the president, even when it risks incurring his displeasure. History is replete with examples of advisors who were marginalized or cast aside for daring to disagree with their superiors. Whether Rubio possesses the fortitude to stand his ground and advocate for his own vision of American foreign policy remains to be seen. The early signs are not encouraging. Rubio's public statements since assuming his dual roles have largely echoed the president's rhetoric, suggesting that he may be prioritizing loyalty over dissent. Only time will tell if Rubio can break free from the echo chamber and become a true guiding voice on the world stage. Section 4. Past as Prologue. Kissinger's shadow looms large. The historical parallel to Henry Kissinger, who held both Secretary of State and National Security Advisor roles under Presidents Nixon and Ford, is difficult to ignore. Kissinger's tenure was marked by both significant foreign policy achievements, such as détente with the Soviet Union and the opening to China, and controversial actions, including the bombing of Cambodia and support for authoritarian regimes. While some observers see echoes of Kissinger in Rubio's dual appointment, there are crucial differences between the two men and the contexts in which they operated. Kissinger was a seasoned diplomat and scholar with deep expertise in international relations, whereas Rubio's foreign policy experience is more limited. Moreover, Kissinger served during a period of intense Cold War rivalry, while Rubio faces a more multipolar world with a wider array of challenges, from great power competition to transnational terrorism and climate change. It is also worth noting that the nature of the presidency has changed considerably since Kissinger's time. The modern presidency is characterized by a much larger and more demanding national security apparatus, with a constant influx of information and crises requiring the president's attention. This makes it even more challenging for one individual to effectively manage both the State Department and the National Security Council. While Kissinger's legacy offers both cautionary tales and potential inspiration, it is ultimately up to Rubio to define his own path. He must navigate the complexities of the 21st century world order, balancing the demands of diplomacy and national security while contending with a president known for his unpredictable nature. Whether he can emerge from Kissinger's shadow and carve out his own legacy as a transformative figure in American foreign policy remains an open question. Section 5. A cast of characters, navigating the corridors of power. Rubio's dual roles place him at the center of a complex web of personalities and competing agendas within the Trump administration. Navigating this treacherous landscape will require political acumen, deft interpersonal skills, and an ability to build alliances while fending off rivals. Key figures influencing foreign policy include Vice President Vance, a seasoned politician known for his more moderate views, Steve Witkoff, a special envoy with close ties to the president, Stephen Miller, a hardline ideologue serving as Deputy Chief of Staff, and Sebastian Gorka, a controversial figure heading counterterrorism efforts on the National Security Council. Each of these individuals brings their own worldview, priorities, and relationships with the president to the table, creating a dynamic and often unpredictable decision-making environment. Adding to the complexity is the president's penchant for seeking advice from outside the traditional foreign policy establishment. This includes individuals like Elon Musk, the billionaire entrepreneur who has reportedly clashed with Rubio in the past but maintains a direct line to the president. Musk's influence, driven by his business interests and his own unconventional views on global affairs, adds another layer of uncertainty to the mix. Rubio's success or failure will depend in large part on his ability to navigate this intricate web of relationships. He must learn to work effectively with those who share his views, build bridges with those who hold different perspectives, and stand firm against those who seek to undermine his authority or manipulate the president for their own gain. It is a high-stakes game of political chess, and Rubio must choose his moves carefully if he hopes to emerge victorious. The year 2025 marks a critical juncture for American taxpayers. The sweeping tax cuts enacted under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 are set to expire. These cuts, largely benefiting individuals and corporations, are poised to disappear unless Congress acts. Republicans, eager to maintain their hold on Congress and the White House, are pushing to extend these tax breaks. They argue that letting them lapse would amount to a significant tax increase on hardworking Americans. The Republican tax plan prioritizes extending the existing tax breaks rather than introducing broad new benefits. This approach, while fiscally prudent in the eyes of many Republicans, presents a unique challenge in terms of public perception. It's harder to rally voters around maintaining the status quo than it is to promise exciting new tax cuts. One of the significant hurdles Republicans face is the public's limited awareness and appreciation of the existing tax benefits set to expire. Many Americans might not even realize they received a tax cut in 2017, let alone grasp the implications of its expiration. This lack of awareness makes it difficult for Republicans to claim credit for preventing a tax hike that voters don't even know is looming. While the focus remains on extending the 2017 cuts, the Republican proposal does include some new tax breaks. These include provisions for those who receive tips, earn overtime pay, and seniors. A more generous state and local tax deduction is also on the table. However, details remain scarce. The actual impact of these new breaks, their timing, and their effectiveness in swaying voters remain uncertain. Section 5. The price of tax relief, potential spending cuts. Extending tax cuts comes at a cost, and Republicans are exploring spending cuts to offset the potential loss of revenue. Proposed cuts include changes to Medicaid, a program providing health coverage to millions of low-income Americans. Green energy tax credits are also on the chopping block. These spending cuts, if enacted, could have a more immediate and tangible impact on Americans than the extension of tax benefits. Such cuts could spark backlash and potentially outweigh any positive sentiment generated by the tax plan. Section 6, Echoes of the Past, Bush, Trump, and the Politics of Tax Cuts. The current debate over tax cuts echoes similar battles fought in the past. The George W. Bush administration enacted substantial tax cuts in the early 2000s, many of which were set to expire after a decade. This led to intense political wrangling, with Democrats and Republicans eventually compromising to extend most of the cuts. The current situation mirrors this dynamic, highlighting the recurring challenges of tax policy and the difficulty in achieving lasting consensus. Section 7. A Boost to the Economy, Predictions and Uncertainties. Republicans champion their tax plan as a boon for the American economy. They argue that extending the 2017 cuts will provide certainty to businesses, encourage investment, and ultimately lead to economic growth. However, economists offer mixed predictions. Some foresee only modest benefits, while others caution that the long-term impact of such large tax cuts on the national debt could outweigh any short-term gains. Section 8. The Messaging Maze, Selling Tax Maintenance to Voters. Republicans face a messaging challenge in selling their tax plan to voters. Framing the extension of existing benefits as a significant win proves difficult, especially when many Americans remain unaware of the looming expiration. Moreover, the potential for spending cuts, particularly to programs like Medicaid, could overshadow any positive messaging around tax relief. Section 9. Conclusion. Will voters notice? As the 2025 deadline for the expiration of the 2017 tax cuts approaches, the political battle lines are being drawn. Republicans are betting that their focus on extending existing benefits, coupled with new, albeit limited tax breaks, will resonate with voters. However, the lack of awareness surrounding the impending expiration, the potential unpopularity of spending cuts, and the difficulty in effectively messaging the benefits of maintaining the status quo present significant hurdles. Whether voters will notice, let alone reward, the Republican effort to prevent a tax hike remains to be seen.
حمدا يوافي نعم الله علينا ويكافئ مزيده، وصلاة وسلاما على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا محمد. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه صلاة وسلاما دائمين متلازمين إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فهذه هي الحلقة الثانية إن شاء الله في سلسلة حديثنا عن الدار الآخرة. أما بعد، حديثنا اليوم بمشيئة الله عز وجل عن قبض الروح، وعن القبر وما فيه، وعن الوصية التي يجب أن يكتبها المسلم. أولا، بإيجاز سريع، قلنا في الحلقات السابقة المقدمة أن أنت لما تذكر الموت وتخليه نصب عينيك ليل نهار يعطيك فوائد ثلاثة أو فوائد ثلاث، يعطيك ثلاثا من الفوائد. الفائدة الأولى التعجيل بالتوبة. لما نذكر الموت على طول يبقى أسرع إيه؟ أبطل الذنوب اللي بعملها. اللهم تب علينا جميعا يا رب، يا رب العالمين. النقطة الثانية النشاط في العبادة. لما الموت يبقى نصب عيني يبقى إيه؟ أبقى نشيط في العبادة، أبقى جاي درس العلم مش رجل قدامه 20 ورا، لا، مش هبقى جاي درس العلم وأمن على الله أن أنا معطل وقتي وسايب شغلي أبدا والله. ده الغذاء الذي تغذي به قلبك، حتى إن عرضت لك عوارض الدنيا استطعت بفضل الله عز وجل أن تقهرها. إن لله عبادا فطنا طلقوا الدنيا وخافوا المحن، نظروا فيها فلما رأوا أنها ليست لحي مسكنا جعلوها لجة واتخذوا صالح الأعمال فيها سفنا. يعني بصوا للدنيا شافوها على إيه؟ على حقيقة أنها زي اللجة، زي الإيه؟ البحر الطامي، زي البحر الزخار بالأمواج، سبحان الله. فأصبح سبحان الله المسلم فيها أو المؤمن بص على الدنيا، طب ينجو ازاي في هذا البحر؟ قال لا اله الا الله ينجو بصالح الاعمال. يبقى صالح الاعمال تستخدم بالنسبه له ايه؟ سفن يستطيع ان يرسو بها على بر السلامه. اللهم اوصلنا جميعا والمسلمين الى بر الامان يا رب العالمين يا رب. يبقى اذا انت لما الموت يبقى قدامك هتسرع بالتوبه. وفي نقطه اهم، انك مش هتعمل ذنوب جديده لانك خلاص انت الموت قدامك. طب سبحان الله، ما دام الموت ينتظرني، وما دام ان العلماء علمونا امورا اربعه، ان الموت يهمنا، وان الروح، وعن القبر وما فيه، وعن الوصيه التي يجب ان يكتبها المسلم. اولا بايجاز سريع، قلنا في الحلقات السابقه المقدمه ان انت لما تذكر الموت وتخليه نصب عينيك ليل نهار يعطيك فوائد ثلاثة او فوائد ثلاث. يعطيك ثلاثا من الفوائد. الفائدة الاولى التعجيل بالتوبة. لما انا اذكر الموت على طول يبقى اسرع ايه؟ ابطل الذنوب اللي بعملها. اللهم تب علينا جميعا يا رب يا رب العالمين. النقطة الثانية النشاط في العبادة. لما الموت يبقى نصب عيني يبقى ايه؟ ابقى نشيط في العبادة. ابقى جاي درس العلم مش رجل قدامه 20 ورا، لا، مش ابقى جاي درس العلم وامن على الله ان انا معطل وقتي وسبب شغلي ابدا. والله ده الغذاء الذي تغذي به قلبك، حتى ان عرضت لك عوارض الدنيا استطعت بفضل الله عز وجل ان تقهرها. ان لله عبادا فطنا طلقوا الدنيا وخافوا المحن، نظروا فيها فلما رأوا انها ليست بحي مسكنا جعلوها لجة واتخذوا صالح الاعمال فيها سفنا. يعني بصوا الدنيا شافوها على ايه؟ على حقيقة انها زي اللجة، زي الايه؟ البحر الطامي، زي البحر الزخار بالامواج سبحان الله. فاصبح سبحان الله المسلم فيها او المؤمن بصص على الدنيا. طب ينجو ازاي في هذا البحر؟ قال لا اله الا الله ينجو بصالح الاعمال. يبقى صالح الاعمال تستخدم بالنسبه له ايه؟ سفن يستطيع ان يرسو بها على بر السلامه. اللهم اوصلنا جميعا والمسلمين الى بر الامان يا رب العالمين يا رب. يبقى اذا انت لما الموت يبقى قدامك هتسرع بالتوبه. وفي نقطه اهم، انك مش هتعمل ذنوب جديده لانك خلاص انت الموت قدامك. طب سبحان الله، ما دام الموت ينتظرني، وما دام ان العلماء علمونا امورا اربعه، ان الموت يهمنا، وان القبر يضمنا، وان القيامه تجمعنا، وان الله يفصل بيننا. يبقى اذا الموت هيعم الكل خلاص. يبقى كلنا لن يترك الموت احد. اذا قلنا انه من اساءة الادب ان يقول مسلم من المسلمين ان ربنا افتكر فلان، ان الله لا ينسى خلاص، وما كان ربك نسيا. يبقى اذا الموت يعمنا. الموت خلاص. ذاك ايه؟ ان الموت حق، وان الساعة حق، وان محمدا حق، والقرآن حق، والجنة حق، والنار حق، وان الله هو الحق المبين. فتوحدوه لا اله الا الله. الموت يعمنا، القبر يضمنا. يضم مين؟ ده بيضم اضداد غريبة. تجد اخوين في القضاء 20 سنة و30 سنة على فدانين ارض، وتدركهم المنية، يدفن ده جنب ده. بعد ما كان الفدانين ارض، الفدان اللي لوحده 4200 متر، الاثنين ب 8400 متر، هما الاثنين اتدفنوا في ايه؟ متر في مترين ومتر في مترين، اخد بالك 4 متر. وسبحان الباقي، وسبحان من يرث الارض ومن عليها. وذلك الشعر قال لهم ايه؟ قال ولقد قلت لنفسي وانا بين المقابر. الراجل راح يزور الايه؟ القبور وبيبص الروح. ولقد قلت لنفسي وانا بين المقابر هل رأيت الامن والراحة الا في الحفائر؟ فنظرت فاذا للدود عكس في المحاجر، ثم قالت ايها السائل اني لست ادري. انظري كيف تساوى الكل في هذا المكان، وتساوى العبد مع رب الصولجان، والتقى العاشق والقالي فما يفترقان، ثم قالت ايها السائل اني لست ادري. كله استوى، الشاكي والمشكو في حقه، الظالم والمظلوم، الرئيس والمرؤوس اللي كان بيرفع له تعظيم سلام، والغلبان اللي ما حدش كان داري بيه، كله اتحط جنب بعض، رص. وبعدين اختفت الاسماء. يقول لك شهاده فلان، لا، ناولني الامانه. الراجل اللي بيسبق تحت الحنوتي او قريبه يقول لك ناولني الامانه، ريح الامانه. هم طلعوا بالخشبه ولا لسه؟ وكأنما الاسماء قد اختفت ولا يبقى الا وجه ربك ذو الجلال والاكرام. الاسم قال ما كانش فلان والاستاذ فلان والحج فلان والشيخ فلان، الحاجه فلانه واللواء فلان ومش عارف الدكتور فلان، وكل خلاص لا القاب ولا حتى اسماء. كل اللي بيقول لك طلعوا بالجثه ولا لسه؟ هي الامانه جهزوها ولا لسه؟ جهزوا المرحوم. يعني اذا حتى الاسم سلب منك، كل حاجه سلبت، لم يبقى الا العمل بس. خلاص. يبقى اذا المسلم سبحان الله يبقى يتناحر ويتضاد. وبعدين العلماء قالوا لنا الموت يعمنا، القبر يضمنا، ضم الكل بقى. وان القيامه تجمعنا. شوف، تجمع من لدن ادم الى ان يرث الله الارض ومن عليها كله، واقف امام من بيده الامر كله. خلاص سبحان الله، لا محامي ولا استئناف ولا نبقى نشوف لنا وصفه. لذلك سيدنا ابو بكر يقول يا رب لا وزير لك فيؤتى ولا حاجب لك فيرشى. لا فيه وزير لك نروح نقول له كلم الكبير، ولا لك حاجب نفتح مخنا معاه يمشي الحال. لا وزير لك فيؤتى ولا حاجب لك فيؤتى، وليس لنا ملجأ منك الا اليك. ليس لا ملجأ من الله الا تضرب راسك في الحيط، تروح يمين تروح شمال، الله لا اله الا هو. الموت يعمنا، القبر يضمنا، القيامه تجمعنا. طب جمعنا، الله يفصل بيننا. يا ابا ذر، قال نعم يا رسول الله. قال له اتدري فيما ينطفحان؟ عارف النعجه دي بتنطح النعجه الثانيه ليه؟ قال له طب وانا ايش عرفني يا رسول الله؟ نعجه بتنطح نعجه. قال ولكن الله يدري وسيفصل بينهما يوم القيامه. العلماء توقفوا عند الحديث اللي يخوف ده. طب نعجه بتنطح نعجه، هل النعجه مكلفه؟ لا. مكلفه؟ مش مكلفه. لا مكلفه الا الانس والجن، الثقلان العقلاء الاثنين، الانس والجن. دايما ربنا بيخاطبهم سبحانه. فالمكلفين دول هم اللي ربنا هيعاقبهم ويحاسبهم. امال النعجه قال لا، ده كنايه عن اقامه الحق يوم القيامه. الملك يومئذ لله سبحانه وتعالى. لا ظلم اليوم. يوم القيامه في الدنيا في في ظلم، لكن يوم القيامه في ظلم. ربنا لا ظلم اليوم، في ظلم. لذلك ولو بغى جبل على جبل لدك الله الباغي، ولو نطحت شاة قرناء شاة جلحاء، يعني لو شاة بقرنين نطحت شاة من غير قرون، لاقتص الله من هذه بتلك. ثم قال لها كوني ترابا، فيقول الكافر يومها يا ليتني كنت ترابا. ما يقول يا ريت كنت بهيمه، يا ريت كنت معزه، يا ريت كنت حمار، بس المهم ينجو من عذاب الله عز وجل. اللهم انجنا من عذاب وابعدنا عن نار جهنم وادخلنا الجنه بدون سابقه عذاب. ضعفاء يا مولانا فقو يا رب في رضاك ضعفنا، واحسن عاقبتنا في الامور كلها يا اكرم الاكرمين، انك مولانا على ما تشاء قدير. يبقى اذا الموت يعمنا، القبر يضمنا، القيامه تجمعنا، الله يفصل بيننا. يفصل تعالى حسنات وسيئات، كل التعاملات يوم القيامه بالحسنات والسيئات. ظلام قال يعلم خائنة الأعين وما تخفي الصدور. فهذا يعني ايه؟ الآن اللي بيبص من تحت لتحت محدش شايفه، لكن الله يرى. محدش بص عليه، لكن ربنا سبحانه. ولذلك العالم قال له قال له يا ابني، ابن اخته قال له يا خالي علمني. حاتم الأصم الله يرضى عليه قال له يا ابني 3 كلمات كلمات ثلاث. قل دائما الله ناظر إلي، الله شاهد علي، الله مطلع إلي. ثلاث كلمات دول، ربنا باصص، ربنا شايفني، ربنا لا تخفى عليه ايه؟ خافية. مفيش، لا تخفى. الماء تسقط من ورقة من شجرة تقع، مكتوبة ايه؟ في كتاب مبين. سبحان الله. لذلك ربنا قال ايه؟ قد علمنا ما تنقص الارض منهم. يعني الارض بتاخد منك ايه؟ اللحم، ويفضل ايه؟ العظم. بعد عشرات السنين تاخد العظم. امال يبقى ايه؟ قال يبقى عجب الذنب. عجب الذنب اللي هو اخر فقرة في العصعص، تفضل منها ذرة. والعلماء بحثوا في هذا الحديث، وهذا الحديث لما عرضناه على بعض العلماء بتوع الاحياء وبتوع البيولوجي والطب الاجانب، سبحان الله بفضل الله اسلم 7 منهم في احد المؤتمرات. معقوله الرسول بتاعكم بيقول سوف يفنى من ابن ادم كل جسده الا عجب الذنب؟ قالوا قلنا ده الحديث ده موجود في صحيح مسلم وصحيح، ورواه ابو هريره لا اله الا الله. قعدوا عملوا تحاليلهم واثباتاتهم العلميه لانه كل جسم الانسان يفنى الا بعض من ذرات من اخر فقره في العمود الفقري، سبحان الله، هي التي يعرف الانسان بها. فاذا شاء الله ان ينفخ في الصور مره اخرى، فسبحان الله، فاذا هم قيام ينظرون يقول مولانا جل في علاه واذا النفوس زوجت، اي اذا عادت الارواح الى ابدانها. مفيش روح محمود تروح لروح عبد اللطيف، ولا روح سمير تروح لروح ايه؟ عبد الله، ابدا. سبحان الله، كل روح تروح للجسد بتاعها. سبحان الله، لان ربنا يقول قد علمنا. ومن الذي علم؟ العليم الخبير. العليم الخبير لا تخفى عليه خافية. سبحان الله. يبقى اذا الموت يعمنا، القبر يضمنا، القيامة تجمعنا، الله يفصل بيننا. فما دام الموت قدامي على طول يبقى عجل بالتوبة، ما اعملش ذنوب. ربنا شايفني، طب اعمل ذنوب ليه؟ سبحان الله. يا رب ان رأيتني اغادر مجالس الذاكرين الى مجالس الغافلين فاكسر لي رجلي فانها نعمة تنعم بها علي. هكذا دعوة الصالحين. لما يا رب تلاقيني ساب الناس الخير دول، هم الابواب في مضيء ده، ورايح عند الناس بتوع الفوضى، ابقى اكسر لي رجلي عشان ايه؟ ما اوصلش الى ايه؟ الى مكان المعصية. اللهم جنبنا المعاصي يا من يحول بين المرء وقلبه، حل بيننا وبين معاصيك، وتب على كل عاصي يا رب، واهد كل ضال، واهدنا معهم يا رب العالمين يا رب العالمين. سبحان الله. وذاك سيدنا علي كان يقول له ايه؟ كان يخاطب ربنا كده، يقول ما اوحش الطريق على من لم تكن دليله. يا سلام، شوف الكلام العالي بقى، اعلى شويه بقى، انسى البيت واللي فيه المشاكل بقى، خليك ساعه مع الله. ما اوحش الطريق على من لم تكن دليله، وما اضيق الطريق على من لم تكن انيسه. يا سلام لما ربنا يؤنسك، لما تبقى انيس لله. ده الواحد يا اخي بيقول له انستنا يا فلان. انستنا يعني ايه؟ هي آنس من جانب الطور نارا، يعني ايه؟ رأى، ظهر له. احنا مستمين انس ليه؟ لان احنا ايه؟ ظاهرين. والجن سمي جن لانه ايه؟ مستتر مستخبي. زي فلان مجنون، ربنا يشفي كل مريض، يعني ايه؟ يعني مستور عقله. جن الانسان يعني ايه؟ ولذلك سميت الحديقة جنة. ليه؟ عشان بالدار اللي جواها. ليه؟ لان الشجر مدار اللي ايه؟ اللي حوالي اللي جواها. اللي جوه مش اللي ما تشوف، اللي بره ما يشوفش اللي جوه. اسمها جنة. سمي البستان جنة لانه يجن ما وراءه. يجن يعني ايه؟ يداري. اما الانس سمي الانس انسا لايه؟ لظهوره. فانت بتقول يا فلان انستنا، ها؟ انستنا يعني ايه؟ هي الواجب الناس فهماها انها من الانس، لا هي من الظهور. ظهرت لنا، ها؟ ظهرت لنا. تخيل انت ان الله انسك، اي ظهر لك، فترى الله في كل حركة. يعني شوف ربنا قدامك، تيجي تعمل حرام تقول لا ربنا شايف ده، لا ازاي، وهكذا. يبقى وقاف عند حدود الله عز وجل. سبحان الله. ما اوحش الطريق على من لم تكن رفيقه. ما يكونش دليل يا رب على من لم تكن دليل. ما دام ربنا مش دليل لك، هياخد دليل مين؟ من دليله؟ قال الشاعر ومن كان الغراب له دليلا يمر به على جيف الكلاب. تخيل واحد ياخد دليل له الغراب، يوديه فين؟ عند مصنع العطور ولا ياخده عند الرمم؟ تخيل. فانت تشوف مين دليلك. مين دليلك؟ المرء على دين خليله فلينظر احدكم من يخالل. اكثروا من الاخلاء الصالحين فان لكل مؤمن شفاعة يوم القيامة. كل مؤمن له شفاعة. ليه؟ لان الاخلاء يومئذ بعضهم لبعض عدو، الا مين؟ الا المتقين اللهم احشرنا في زمرتهم يا رب. الموت يبقى قدامي اعجل بالتوبة، ما اعملش الذنوب. ايه كمان؟ العبد المسلم ما دام الموت قدامه يبقى نشيط في العباده. ايه اللي يخليك تجري على الجامع، تقوم بالليل تصلي، تقرا جزء القران الورد اللي عليك، وتتقي الله وتغض البصر وما تسد ودانك عن الحرام ليه ده كله؟ لان الموت امامك، لان شايف ان ربنا قد ياخذك فجاه، وما دام هياخذك فجاه يبقى انت مستعد للقاء الله. وقال اهل العلم: لا راحه للمؤمن الا بلقاء الله عز وجل. يعني المؤمن ما يستريحش الا ايه؟ الا لما يلقى الله. طب عشان المدة قد تطول، يمكن تلقى الله بعد 20 سنة، بعد سنة، بعد اسبوع، بعد 100 سنة. فربنا خلى من رحمته لنا لقاءات متكررة عشان نلتقي بالله، عشان نستريح. لا راحة للمؤمن الا ايه؟ الا بلقاء الله. القى الله امتى؟ قد ربنا خلى لقاء غصب عنك، تلاقي نفسك مفروض انك تلقاه 5 مرات في اليوم، الصبح ظهر وعصر ومغرب وعشاء. ادي ايه؟ 5 اوقات بتلقى الله فيها. تقف بين يدي الله، انت تتكلم والله يسمع، انت تدعو والله يجيب، انت تقرأ والله يستمع اليك. سبحان الله. انت تدعو والله يجيب دعوتك، انت تسأل والله يعطيك. سبحان الله. وذاك قال ايه؟ قال: يا بني ادم قوموا، لما يأذن الاذان: قوموا الى نيرانكم التي اشعلتموها على انفسكم بالذنوب فاطفئوها بالصلاة. اذا انت بتعمل ذنوب بتوجب انك تحترق، قم تصلي تروح مطفي الايه؟ النار اللي انت ولعتها ايه؟ على روحك. اللهم اطفئ لنا نيران الدنيا ونيران الاخرة يا رب العالمين يا رب. امين يا رب العالمين. سبحان الله. يبقى اذا انا كمسلم الموت قدامي، يبقى اذا ربنا سبحانه وتعالى هيخليني نشيط في العبادة. النشيط في العبادة، فالقاه كل ما اجي القى الله عز وجل ما تبقاش عادة، انا عايزها عبادة. مش جاي المغرب عشان في درس، لا، دي عبادة لله. تعمر بيت ربنا، تقعد مع الاخوه الصالحين، تحيط بك الملائكه، تنزل عليك السكينه، تاخذ كلمه تهديك. سبحان الله. كلمه يعني تجعلك في عداد التائبين. يبقى اذا انت بقى بتاخذها عباده، والله عز وجل يفاخر بك ملائكته ويقول لك: يا عبدي انت عندي كبعض ملائكتي. سبحان الله. انت عندي كبعض ملائكتي. سبحان الله، من كرم الله عز وجل عليك. كمان لما يبقى الموت نصب عينيه، يبقى اذا المسلم بعد ان هو سبحان الله يتوب وما يعملش الذنوب ويبقى نشط في العبادة، يبقى عنده يقين في الله فلا يحزن. ايه اللي بيخلي الناس تكتئب؟ لان الدنيا لسه طويلة. يقول لك: يا ترى الشهر الجاي هناكل من ايه؟ السنة الجاية يا ترى هنلاقي طوب ناكل ولا مش هنلاقي؟ هذا يا ترى هنربي العيال دول ازاي؟ يا ترى هنلاقيهم شقق ولا لا؟ يا ابني ما تعولش، لا تعول هم الغد، فانما الغد بيد الله، ومن رزقك اليوم قادر على ان يرزقك غدا. مفيش حاجه اسمها يوم ما تموت هتاخد كل حسابك على غير المليين. يعني يوم ما تموت الحساب اللي مكتوب لك وانت في المنبع زي ما قلنا الاسبوع اللي فات في بطن امك هتاخده بالمليين. مفيش مليم يبقى ناقص. سبحان الله. ضربت لك المثل بالراجل اللي جاي زعلان، هو بيحب اللحمه. الدكاتره قالوا: لو اكلت لحمه هتروح في داهيه. ليه؟ قال: نسبه الكوليسترول عاليه والى اخره. قال له: طب ناكل حمراء ولا سمين ولا غيره، ما تاكلش اي نوع من اللحوم. يا راجل زعلان، تقدر تفهمني الحكمه؟